Hi everybody, Mike from the Digital Media Lab here to show you how to work non-destructively inside of Adobe Photoshop. Now I'm working inside of a Mac as well as Adobe Photoshop CS6, however this will work on a PC or any version of Photoshop I can think of. I've chosen Project Builder 1 out of Chapter 8 to show you because I know that a lot of students have a little bit of trouble with this project. I would like to note, however, that I'm going to be doing things a little bit differently from the instructions provided. Let's get started. The first thing we need to do is I'm going to press spacebar to temporarily bring up my hand tool, and I'll drag down a little bit, and I need to zoom in actually, so I'm going to press Command plus to zoom in a little bit, and then I'm going to hold down my spacebar and to bring up my hand tool. So now I can clearly see the red nail polish. And first thing we need to do is go ahead and select the red nail polish. Oh, one thing I almost forgot. If you guys see the pixel grid, which I find rather annoying, if we zoom in a little bit more here, we should see it. This pixel grid is quite annoying. You simply need to go to View, Show, and then uncheck Pixel Grid by selecting it. I'll go ahead and press Command minus to zoom out a little bit. Keep in mind that's Control minus on the PC. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use my Quick Selection tool. Now let's take some notes about the Quick Selection tool. It works very, very well when there's quite a bit of difference between the thing that you want to select and the thing that you do not. Also, when I make a selection, I will end up kind of teeter-tottering, sort of selecting and then deselecting areas here. So let's go ahead and select it. Go ahead and select that little bit right there. And as we can see here, it selected some parts that we want and selected some parts that we don't want. I'll go ahead and hold down the Alt or Option key and click and drag to deselect those areas that I don't want. And if I let go of the Alt Option key, it brings up the Add Quick Selection tool, and I'll go ahead and select a little bit of area there. And we notice that it's kind of gone over too much. So again, I'll hold down the Alt or Option key and deselect some of that, kind of go back and forth until I get a selection that I am happy with. I'm pretty happy with that. Let's try the other side of the bottle. Let's get that right there. And that's looking pretty good like that. Now it doesn't have to be perfect. This is a low resolution image, which is going to make this technique a little difficult, as I'll show you in a second. Now, whenever you have a selection or these marching ants going around something, one of the things that you can do is you can instantly turn that into a layer mask by simply clicking the Add a Layer Mask icon at the bottom of your Layers palette. I'll click that, and there we go. Voila! I've created a mask where black conceals and white reveals. If I go ahead and hold down the Alt key and click the thumbnail for the mask, we can actually see the mask itself. And there we have it. It's selecting that area. I'll go ahead and click the thumbnail for the layer to bring back up my image. The next thing we need to do is I'm going to go ahead and press Command J to duplicate this layer. There we go. We have a copy of our layer along with its layer mask. With our polish's copy selected, I'll go ahead and double click the name and we'll call this red polish. Now, we don't need the red nail polish for right now. I'm going to go ahead and click the eyeball on that layer to hide it, revealing our polish's layer below. Now, we actually would like a layer where the red nail polish is hidden, but the rest of the image is showing. So it's exact opposite. So our mask here is actually the exact opposite of what we want. So in effect, where it is white here, we want black, and where it is black, we want white. Now, that is a simple thing in Photoshop. All I need to do is make sure I click the thumbnail of the mask, not the thumbnail of the image, the thumbnail of the mask. And I'll go ahead and press Command I to invert that selection or mask. One thing I'd like to note is that a mask and a selection are actually pretty much the same thing. Now we can see that we have a little bit of what this is called is aliasing, these kind of like gray pixels that are edging around here. A lot of this has to do with the fact that this is a low resolution image. I'm going to go ahead and fix that by grabbing my brush tool. And a mask is simply a grayscale image. And you can manipulate that grayscale image any way that you would normally manipulate a grayscale image. In this case, I'm going to paint with black as my foreground color. If you don't have black as your foreground color, you can press the D key and then X. So D for default, which will bring your foreground and background colors to their default state, and then X to invert or make your background color your foreground and your foreground your background. So with black as my foreground color, I'll go ahead and paint around that edge like this. There we go. And we've kind of fixed that little bit of odd edges there. Okay, the next thing we need to do is, I'll go ahead and hold down spacebar to drag my image up a little bit. The next thing that we need to do is clone stamp this area out where our red nail polish was. Well, the way to work with the clone stamp tool so that it is non-destructive is simply to work on a new blank layer. Let me show you how. I'm going to press Command Shift and N or Control Shift and N on your PC to create a new layer. I'll go ahead and call this red polish stamp and press OK to commit the change. We can see we have a new blank layer above our polishes layer. I'm going to go ahead and press the S key to bring up our clone stamp tool. And by default, let me change that back to default. By default, it's set to only sample the current layer. Well, our current layer is empty. That's not going to work, is it? So what we need to do is change this from current layer to all layers. That way, it will sample all visible layers. Notice that this layer is invisible, so it's not going to sample that layer, is it? I'm going to press the Alt key to sample a little bit of my area here and start painting in the area that I want. Now, whenever I'm working with the clone stamp tool, it's often a good idea to sample several times. So paint a little bit and then hold down the Alt key or Option key and sample and then paint a little bit, sample and then paint a little bit, sample and paint a little bit. And I'll just go ahead and continue that a little faster now. Blending some of that in there. And I'm going to go ahead and actually go over. Now, it's going to be sort of beyond the rounded shape that I want, right? The curvature is not going to match. Well, again, in Photoshop, we can actually fix that pretty easily. And it's going to end up being easier to sort of take away. I need to fix this little area right here. It's actually going to be easier to sort of take away than it is going to be to add. I'm pretty happy with that. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and add a layer mask to the red polish stamp layer. Again, by clicking the Add a Layer Mask icon at the bottom of the Layers palette. There we go. I'm going to once again grab my brush tool. And let's take a look at, I'm going to go ahead and grab a nice hard brush. So I'm going to take my hardness setting and drag that all the way to 100%. 13 pixels, which should be fine. Black, again, should remain my foreground color, and I'm just going to paint with black and sort of remove and kind of create that nice edge that I'd like. Now, if you're new to Photoshop, you're not going to recreate this edge very easily. In fact, mine doesn't even quite look exactly right. Clone stamping is a difficult art. Don't expect yourself to recreate this edge perfectly. It's a very difficult thing to do. Okay, so I'll press Command minus to zoom out a little bit. It's always a good idea to kind of zoom out and check and see how our clone stamping looks. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. So let's go ahead, and the next step is to drop out this white nail polish bottle here. So the first thing I need to do is grab my quick selection tool. We'll use that same selection tool once again. And if I were to start selecting here, I actually have the layer mask selected. We can see here with these four corners of the rectangle selecting the thumbnail that's selected. I actually need to make sure that I have the actual layer that I want to do the selecting on selected. And I'll go ahead and start painting inside of here. And we'll notice that wherever Photoshop has high amounts of contrast, it actually is going to do quite a good job. So in here, it should go ahead and select that. I'll go ahead and press the Alt Option key to get that. It kind of didn't do exactly what I wanted it to do. That's all right. I'll go ahead and press the Alt key. The quick selection tool always kind of, it always has a tendency to sort of grab a little bit more than you want. It particularly does well when there's high amounts of contrast. So this red nail polish bottle usually doesn't get picked up when I'm selecting this area right here. I probably just barely caught a tiny bit of it by accident. And that's pretty common. And again, when using the quick selection tool, you often have to select and then deselect. Go ahead and click that, deselect that. Of course, I'm missing a little part of the bottle there. Now, the quick selection tool works just like a brush and maintains all of its hotkeys and settings and things like that. So I'm going to press the bracket key to step my brush down a little bit and go ahead and grab that. You know, I'd like to zoom in on this a little bit, so I'm going to press Command plus, that's Control plus on a PC, to zoom in on a little bit. I can see that I've got some things selected that I don't want to. Again, holding down the Alt Option key to kind of deselect things like so, and kind of getting my selection perfect. Again, a selection with a very pixelated image or kind of a low-res image as this one, it's never going to be perfect. You're always going to have these little niches and things like that. Oops, made a mistake, so I'll press Command Z. That's Control Z on a PC. And I'll go ahead and deselect a little bit of that. Of course, I like to get things as perfect as I can. However, there's no need for you to really stress out about these tiny little details. I'm pretty happy with that. Now, I already have a layer mask, so if I were to follow the previous steps of adding a layer mask, it's actually not going to work. It actually only gives me the option of adding a vector mask. Well, I don't have a vector here. It's not actually going to do anything. What I need to do is add this selection to my layer mask. I can do that by clicking the layer mask itself. And whenever you have these marching ants, you're telling Photoshop, I only want to affect the area inside of the ants. And you might be thinking I could simply grab my brush tool and start brushing in here like so. And we can see that wherever I brush, it's only affecting the areas inside of that selection that we made. However, there's a much faster way to do that. I'll press Command Z or Control Z on your PC to undo that. I can actually just simply fill this entire area with my foreground color. If you don't have black as your foreground color, although it should still be there, once again, those hotkeys are D to transfer them to a white and black default state, so D for default, and then X to kind of cross those settings, so your foreground and background will be flipped. With those selected, I'll go ahead and press the Alt Option key as well as the Delete or Backspace key on PC to fill that area with black. And we can see here that it's filled with black. I'll go ahead and deselect that by going up to my menu and selecting Deselect. And there we go. The white bottle has been removed. I'll go ahead and touch up that once again with my brush tool, clicking and dragging and just getting rid of that little bit of edge like so. Good. Now I'm going to press Command minus or Control minus on the PC. And let's show that red nail polish layer. Of course, right now it's in front of everything. Oops, I have to select. Whenever moving things, you have to select that layer. I'm going to press the V key to bring up my selection tool and then click that layer so that it's selected. And then I'm going to click and drag it up over here so that it's going to position itself somewhere roughly about right there. Good. Now, of course, it's in front of everything, so I simply need to click and drag that layer so that it falls beneath. Remember that this is essentially like stacking pieces of paper on top of each other. The topmost layer is going to be the most visible. It's going to be on top of everything else beneath it. So I have that there, and I'm going to kind of reposition it just slightly. Now, the first problem I see with this is that I have a little bit of this nail polish. The applier is sticking out here. So we'll go ahead and select that layer, and specifically its layer mask by clicking that layer mask thumbnail. I'm going to grab my brush tool, and once again, I'm just going to touch up my mask by painting black on that layer mask. And there we go. It hides those pixels because I'm painting with black. Very good. Okay, so now we need to do some more clone stamping in order to get that right good. I'm going to go ahead and hide my red nail polish layer because what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to stamp quite a bit of this entire thing. We're going to run into a little bit of a problem. So just like before, I'm going to press Command-Shift-N, or that's Control-Shift-N on the PC to bring up a new layer. I'm going to call this, let's call this white polish stamp. And with that selected, I'll go ahead and press the eyeball of our red nail polish layer to hide it. There we go, because I'm going to kind of clone stamp in there. And let's start clone stamping. And I'm going to go ahead, I kind of can remember where that bottle is and make sure all layers. I'm going to press the S key to bring up my clone stamp tool. And then I'm going to press the Alt Option key to sample an area and start kind of painting in there like so. I kind of remember where that nail polish is, but I'm not too concerned if I kind of go over because I'm on my own layer. We're going to come back and repair any weird oddities that we come up with. Sometimes the clone stamp tool can be a little blunt. Let's sample from over here and kind of mix up this texture just a little bit. Maybe sampling over here to kind of, yeah, maybe a little bit of darker color. There we go. I'm pretty happy with that. That's satisfactory. Now obviously my clone stamping has kind of gone too far, but we can always add a layer mask, like so, to kind of repair it. Now here's the kind of odd thing. I need my red nail polish to show through. Now I could grab my brush tool and try and fix it like this, but we've actually already done a lot of this work. We don't need to redo it. One of the things I'd like you guys to really remember and really learn well is the fact that a mask and a selection are essentially the same exact thing. Whenever you have a mask, you're essentially saying, I want that area selected. And likewise, whenever you have the marching dots, you're essentially saying that whatever I do is going to show, and whatever I do out of that selection is going to be hidden. What I can do is if I hold down the Command key or the Control key on your PC, you'll notice my cursor changes into this little marching ants box and the hand tool. And I'll go ahead and click that layer mask. Now I have a selection, and just as before, now I accidentally created a layer mask here. I'm going to go ahead and click and drag that to the trash can because that layer mask is empty and I don't want it. I hope that you guys didn't do that. I think I created that by accident. And I can go ahead and create a layer mask out of the selection. Remember, we command clicked this thumbnail for our red polish layer. And by default, it's going to reveal the area of our selection and hide the area of not of our where we didn't have selected. That's the exact opposite of what we want. Well, remember, what do we do when we have a mask that is the opposite what we want? We simply select the thumbnail for that mask and press Command-I or Control-I on the PC to invert that mask. And there we go. We have it already kind of masked out like that. Perfect. Next thing we could do is just simply grab our brush tool and maybe touch this up just a little bit so that it's not going on top of our bottles. Once again, just painting with black, like so. And if I need to make any modifications to this, it is on its own layer, and that mask is still going to be present no matter, unless I remove it. I can still go back here and paint a little bit more. Oh, I kind of grabbed some of the edge there with my clone stamping. Let's sample from down here. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So I'll press Command minus to zoom out a little bit, and we can see how to work non-destructively. These are just one of the few ways of working non-destructively, but when it comes to clone stamping, you want to work on a new blank layer. And when it comes to kind of hiding things or deleting pixels, what you really want to do is create a layer mask, which will hide those pixels opposed to deleting them. If there was an electrical storm or something like that, I would completely lose all of those pixels if I had deleted them, and my computer could get reset. Things happen. So it's always best idea, it's always good practice to find a way to work non-destructively and create an image that you can always come back to and you have those original pixels. Well, thanks for watching, guys. That's all I have for you.